I left the corporate world over 10 years ago now, and I still work within the corporate world a lot. And one thing that has not gone away is one, the relentless pressure that leaders and employees face within organizations, but two, also the increasing demand of that pressure due to lack of resources, lack of budget, increases in technology, and all of those sorts of things, which is culminating in this big problem that we're facing that, by all accounts, is costing us billions, right?
Yeah, it's insane. Apparently, it's costing the UK economy £5 billion in lost productivity.
Whoa. So what's going on, Chloe?
The way I'm understanding and learning is that it's poor work-life balance. You must know yourself from working in corporate. It's very different to working for yourself, and the pressure is on, with often not a lot of thought for people's well-being so much. And it's starting to have a huge impact. I think since COVID-19, it's got even worse.
Why is that, do you think?
I'm sure it's a number of reasons. I think that COVID taught us so many lessons, and I think so many of us are quite privileged now to be able to do some work from home or be able to be a bit more mobile, whether we're corporate or not. However, it also enables us to be switched on a lot of the time. You know, the people I speak to are having no gaps between their Zoom meetings. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a culture of people almost trying to catch up since COVID as well, because we had that long period where things were so unstable.
And you call this the recovery deficit.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I believe that there's a chronic gap in people's productivity and the amount of time that they're actually taking for themselves. So taking that strategic recovery so that they can actually go further.
And so recovery is the key here.
I believe recovery is the only way to balance the stress that we're under in the life.
Well, before we come to solutions, I think it would be good to dig into what this deficit actually looks like, because this is clearly something that is global and, you know, particularly within, working societies where there is high technology and there's increasing pressure. But for us to really connect with this, it's why is this such an issue? Let's have a look at the problems that we're all facing and try and understand this deficit a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. I don't know if you feel this yourself, but I think that, again, we're switched on a lot of the time. You know, I don't know about you. How many unread emails do you have in your email inbox?
2,862.
I think mine's about 13,000. So I think that we're being bombarded from all angles with technology, with information, with trying to keep up with the relentless pace of life, because with technology, it's obviously amazing in some respects, but it also enables us to be permanently switched on. And I think that becomes an issue because we end up being in a state of fight or flight or even freeze. You know, we're in that state of, our brains believe that when we're permanently switched on, that we're in a state of stress. And of course, the impact that has within our body is that our blood sugar rises, you know, our heart rate increases, our temperature goes up. We're fully fired up for action. You know, our primitive brain, our prehistoric brain, believes that we're being chased by a tiger. But of course we're not. We're just dealing with the modern day stresses of life that have become compounded. You think about when people get ready for work, maybe the kids are driving them mad, so maybe they're shouting at the kids on their way to work. They get in their car and somebody tries to cut them up. That's another little bit of stress. They get into the office and they've got, you know, so many Slack notifications on their phone. They've then got so many unread emails, and this builds up to this relentless amount of stress that, again, our brains can't deal with unless we start to actually think about what we're going to do, to recover, to rest strategically.
So with that fight, flight, freeze response, so whereas it used to be a tiger, and our brains are still in that place, our brains are still as primitive as thinking it's a tiger, because we haven't had any type of upgrade. We haven't really been plugged into the system to get a reboot. We're not on the new version of Apple. It's still that old. So instead of thinking it's a tiger, now it's the email notification. It's the deadline. It's the person cutting you up in the traffic. It's the sheer volume of emails in your inbox. That's the tiger, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I guess what we're trying to do there then to recover is we are going onto Facebook and scrolling. We are going onto Instagram and scrolling through feeds to try and get some kind of respite. But that's not helping either, is it?
Yeah. And not only that, what else are people doing? Coffee is a big one. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't drink coffee, but when we're relying on coffee to get us through, that's raising our stress hormones as well. Alcohol is going to do the same kind of thing. Sugary foods do the same kind of thing.
My biggest weakness.
And then, as you said, scrolling on your phone is again stimulating your brain to be fired up again. And what else happens is that we're not getting quality sleep. If we're not getting quality sleep, we're not recovering very well. So our brains can't deal with the stress that's been going on during the day.
Right.
So you can see where the cycle just continues.
So this is where this deficit, this gap between our productivity and, and I guess, what we actually need is widening and costing the UK this 5 billion sum. What can we account that to in terms of lost productivity? What do we think that means when it comes to workplaces?
Yeah, well, I'm sure it means that people are potentially taking time off, sick days, mental health days. I believe that 5 billion pounds came from the Mental Health Foundation 2021. So I think that impacts. I also believe that if people are just, at their desk for 8 hours at a time, which many people are in corporate, they're not going to be as productive. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but I think for most of us, our brain can concentrate for about 20 minutes.
The Pomodoro is Pomodoro the
Yeah,
yeah, that's around 20 minutes, isn't it?
yeah. That's focused, attention for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're sat at a desk just staring, trying to get on with things, you can see how that's going to be losing productivity as well. So you
Mm.
can quite easily see how that 5 billion pounds adds up.
Yeah, because if we're thinking about from a bigger picture sort of perspective here, I know there's lots of wellbeing initiatives in organizations now. There are steps, there have been strides to try and combat this, but it's almost like putting it's almost like putting the plaster on the wound rather than looking at the root cause of it. Don't get me wrong, I am hearing amazing things that are happening, particularly in larger organizations. I have a friend that works for Just Eat, and there's a whole massive initiative there. So there is work being done, but I think what we really need to understand is to connect with this on a really personal level and understand what that means for us as individuals, because that really is where we can, yes, organizations can put well-being initiatives, yes, they can have help with support, and we're going to talk about how you do that, but it's that help and support needs to empower the individual to understand where these problems lie for them. So we've talked about a few of where this recovery deficit is coming from. So we've talked about things like always being plugged in, having no kind of flow or break to your workday, using unhealthy ways of escaping from that technology, or going from technology to technology, or going from technology to eating sugary foods, to drinking alcohol to escape, to staying up late, doom scrolling, or watching even something that you want to escape into, like something on Netflix, which isn't bad in itself. And we all need to kind of escape from life's brightness once in a while. But if you then binge watching episodes right into the night because you're watching something really good, and then, oh my God, look at the time, and now I'm not getting the sleep I need, it's this ever increasing circle of perpetuating of this deficit that we as individuals have the power to do something about, right?
100%. 100%.
Well, I'm on board, I mean, I've made quite a few radical changes to my own recovery deficit over the last few months. And it was in making those quite drastic changes that I really have seen a massive improvement in my strategic recovery. But even then, so I stopped drinking, and I've really been looking at my food intake, and I've been really looking at like unhealthy escape habits and things like that. Sleep's massively improved. But the one thing that I still struggle with is taking time to change up my workflow, because I get hyper focused on things. And when I'm really excited about something, I go down a proper rabbit hole, and then I have the tendency to burn myself out. I'm excited and I love it and it's amazing. And
Yeah.
yet there is positive stress there that you stress
Yes.
in that flow state, in that, oh, I'm buzzing, I'm buzzing, I'm buzzing, I'm buzzing. But then it does have a tendency to turn into de-stress.
Yeah.
And so I can really relate to this. And do you know what, Chloe? Ever since we have done this work together, it's been at the forefront of my mind. And isn't that great? Because it's things like the recovery deficit, that word, and strategic recovery, which we're going to talk more about in a minute, that has really stuck in my mind.
That's
And
fantastic. I'm so
yes,
glad to hear you say that, because I really believe that it's a lot of this is about awareness, and it is about bringing that awareness to the forefront of your mind, so that it does keep tapping you on the shoulder and you're thinking,
that's it.
I'm sure just from us talking today, the next time you're into your hyper focus, you'll be thinking, you know what? What am I going to do later on?
Pomodoro, need to stop, do something else, need to stop, go for a walk, need to stop, do a workout to help with that recovery.
Yeah.
But it really has, honestly, I'm not making that up. It really has helped me. And something I want to touch on here, which I've just recorded an episode about, I can't remember if it will come out before or after yours, is what's known as a legacy phrase.
Okay.
So your legacy phrase is about strategic recovery and the recovery revolution. This is your legacy phrase, which you are known for. You're taking strides to be known for in association with the movement that you're creating. And it's simple words, two simple words, strategic recovery, that that can be unpacked into everything else that you are about, and why you're doing this, and what it is that you're helping people with. So I think it's probably about a good time to find out what that is, and why you, Chloe, are on a mission to change this. Why is this important to you?
Yeah. So thanks for asking that question. I My background was always in fitness. So I started off in the fitness industry, but it soon became apparent that people needed help with more than just moving their bodies. So I started to learn more about the mind. I studied the mind, I studied coaching. But then it became really noticeable that so many people I was speaking to were struggling with sleep, with energy, with lifestyle diseases.
Mm,
And it became my mission just to spread the words that change and energy and strategic recovery don't have to be huge changes that you make. It's really about just helping people to simplify and understand themselves a little bit better, so that they can start to think about that stress is part of our life. Okay, so we've got to learn how to manage it. So if we add together stress plus recovery, that's what leads us to growth.
And that's another really great formula. If you think of it like a formula for anyone listening, stress plus recovery equals growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, well, I'll let you explain.
Well, it's if we keep piling stress on top of stress on top of stress, as you mentioned just a little while ago, you head to burnout. Yeah? If you add stress onto stress, maybe you're going to end up with a weakened immune system. You're going to get a cold, then you're going to have time off. Or maybe you're going to have stress from work and then you're going to go and do a heavy workout in the gym and then something else happens and then you injure yourself because bodies aren't meant to be pushed and pushed and pushed all the time. But when we try to navigate, and I have a bit of a problem with the word balance because I don't think there ever really is a balance. It's more like a push pull dynamic.
Yes.
But I think that when we have that, okay, I've had a really tough day. Is it going to serve me to go to the pub and get drunk and deal with my stress with more stress? Or could I just decide to go home and have a bath? It can be as simple as that, but it's just learning like, okay, do I need to be coming home and going back onto my phone again and looking through my work emails and chugging over them? Or am I better off to just relax, do a little bit of yoga, practice a little bit of breathing, anything to just shift that pushing into the pulling back into recovery.
And when we work together to create your signature keynote, these are the sorts of things that we were building into the keynote in terms of what I call the golden nuggets. So within your signature keynote, you have to present the problem at the wider level. You have to talk about the real problem. You have to share why you're this is personal to you and it connects with you. But also the audience want to know, whether that's a corporate audience, whether that's, you're delivering a workshop, a program, a keynote talk, whatever it might be, what they can do to make a difference here. And you've alluded to some things there, but let's explore some of the things that you covered in the keynote in terms of your golden nuggets that anybody listening can implement today.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one of my favorite golden nuggets is around creating those digital boundaries. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you what that means, but it's going back to the being permanently switched on. Most of us wake up. What do we do when we wake up? We go straight on our phone. On the way to work, we've got Slack notifications pinging, Google Meets, Zoom meetings popping into our calendar. And then we get to work and we've got a full day of usually being on technology all day long. So my vision is to really highlight the fact that, how would your employees work better? How would we as individuals work better as well if there was some kind of solution? So there's no internal emails sent between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Or sorry, 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Just
Yeah.
so that, because our phones are so tempting, aren't they? It's
Yeah.
so tempting to keep picking up and looking at them. But if we know that nothing from work is going to go through overnight, it gives our brain that little bit of an opportunity to
Switch.
switch off and
Yeah.
recover.
Yeah, recover. So really great point. And it's called something. You called it something, which I love. I love what you call it. The
What, digital boundaries?
technology
Golden
sunset.
sunsets. Yeah.
So technology sunset. So again, you're sort of associating a phrase with an action, right? A technology sunset. Let's just put this into perspective here, right? Imagine if all employees within a company agreed they had some kind of well-being charter, that there would be a technology sunset between PM and 7 a.m. every single day. That means that there is no obligation, or it's discouraged to send any emails within that time window or to actually read them. Now, I know for a fact within lots of organizations I've worked with, it's not just one in particular, that there's almost this thing that gets bred into people that if someone's going to send an email at 10 o'clock at night, then someone should respond at 10 o'clock at night. And it gets into this sort of expectation loop where if more and more people are sending emails out of hours, more and more people are responding to those emails out of hours. And then an expectation is set that you should be available out of hours to respond. Now, anybody listening to this that works within an organization and is in a high pressured environment and thinks, how on earth would we do that? We are so up to the hilt as it is at the moment. What would doing that, how would doing that help us? Well, that's all about the recovery, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sleep is one of the absolute pillars of recovery. I think it's probably the most important part of health. Whether you're trying to focus more, whether you're trying to become healthier, if we're not getting enough quality sleep, and people will say, oh, I've had eight hours last night, but I'm sure that if we actually looked at the breakdown of their sleep cycles, potentially they're not getting enough deep sleep, which means that their brain hasn't got a chance to actually clear out what's gone on during the day. So I think that's one thing, and I think that people would just be fresher.
Exactly.
They'd be ready to, you haven't checked an email for 12 hours. So when you go into it, it's not like, wow, it's an email, but it's like, okay, now I'm in focus mode now because I've had that
Exactly.
time to switch off properly.
Yes, exactly. I mean, think about going back to that formula: stress plus recovery equals growth. By
The growth.
putting
Yeah.
in that technology sunset,
Yeah.
then we're enabling that recovery. And that's actually, people like rules and boundaries. Human beings really, really like, we did as children, we needed the guardrails in order to understand and feel safe in the world. It's the same as adults. We need the boundaries in order to feel okay and safe. If there isn't any, then woof, all hell breaks loose, right?
Yeah.
So that's one really amazing golden nugget. What else?
I think that another thing, talking about corporates, I believe that just imagine a world where in any company, large or small, there was a recharge room, a space for people to just take even 5 minutes, even 10 minutes out, because it doesn't have to be hours and hours of recovery, but just time out with dimmed lights, comfy chairs, maybe a bit of warmth, maybe something that smells nice in there. And just a chance, no phones, just a chance to just close your eyes, breathe,
Yeah,
and again, just recharge,
yeah,
to take your body out of that fight or flight
yeah.
into a bit of rest and digest.
Love that. The rest and digest bit is so important. And now I'm just remembering when I was a very sleep deprived mum, right? And with two young children. You'll remember this. You're so sleep deprived, you feel sick and you can't sleep because you've got to look after, especially when they're like toddlers, right? And I remember someone saying to me once, lie on the sofa and just, put your feet up. Put your feet up for 10 minutes. And even doing that, even though you're not allowed to sleep, even maybe if you had a micro sleep for like a minute, that is going to help you. It's going to help you get through the rest of the day. Because I was falling asleep at the wheel. It's terrible how sleep deprived I was because of my daughter's illnesses.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that at work. If there's a recharge room, if you're exhausted, you're tired, you're stressed, you need a break, you go into a dark room, there's no technology allowed in the room, you can have a 5-minute nap.
Yeah.
And that could be enough to make the rest of your day massively productive.
I believe even 1 minute would make a difference. It's just, as you said, it's not about having to take a sleep. It's just about being rather than doing.
And the rest and digest it. When you say digest, it's not just about sort of digesting a meal, it's digesting data, information.
Yeah, but our body needs that, when we've been super stressed, we need that time for our nervous system to go into the rest and digest, into the parasympathetic to just recover.
And there are these micro moments we can take as well. So if there is no recharge room, which I really hope there should be. And I'm sure there is, out there somewhere. But if there isn't, we can take hold of that ourselves, right? We can put practices into our day ourselves, not just the technology sunsets, but I guess things that we can do for ourselves. Like, for example, I used to read all my books on this phone, Apple Books. And I can't believe how long I did it for, because I had a Kindle years ago and it broke. But I love to read before bed. So I got a Kindle at Christmas. Ever since then, the phone is now on airplane at like 9 o'clock. And it's away from my bed. And I read on the Kindle.
Great idea.
And because it's so tempting. And, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, because I was waking up a lot in the middle of the night, and reach for the phone and go scrolling through social media to try and get me back to sleep. It's just madness.
Yeah.
But now, if I wake up in the night, which is happening way, way less since I did all these things, I'm literally reading a couple of pages of the Kindle, and then I'm able to go back to sleep.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well done, you.
Thank you. But it's simple things like that, right?
And do you know what? And this is what I say to people. It's often not around having to make these huge changes. It's about, being honest with yourself and recognizing, okay, what one tiny step, what one micro habit could I add into my day? Because, we find it difficult to change things really quickly. But if we just decide to, okay, 9 p.m., yeah, my phone's going away from me. Or even on our lunch breaks, actually, I'm, going to switch my phone onto airplane mode. I've actually, since I got back from Auckland, and you talking about sleep deprivation, I had jet lag, which was debilitating. So I fully sympathize and empathize with anybody that is not sleeping well, because after 10 days of really disrupted sleep, my body felt anxious, my skin was suffering, and I really didn't feel at my best. So, sleep is so, so powerful.
Yes, it is. And how we protect that, as much as possible. There's even things like about eating before bed. Is that something that you talk about with your clients?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe that in order to get optimal sleep,
Yeah.
and optimal sleep is not around getting more sleep, it's around getting better quality sleep. So some people might, after working with me, get less sleep, but they feel more refreshed.
Right.
So yeah, when it comes to eating, I would always advise people to try and stop eating anything at least 3 hours before bed. Because otherwise you're going to bed and your body's trying to digest the food and you're trying to go to sleep. So it's like your bodily systems are fighting against one another.
Yeah.
One of the other things that everybody can do that does not going to cost you anything, just some awareness, is to notice the way that you're breathing. Because when we're in a state of stress, when we're in a state of anxiety, we tend to breathe really high up. And we also tend to breathe more through our mouth. And interesting fact of the day, we're not really designed to breathe through our mouths. We're designed to breathe through our noses. So, anybody listening, a micro habit you could just try is to just close your mouth and just think about breathing in and out through your nose. And even better, to try and make that exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. That will stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system and will start to immediately tell your body, I'm safe. There's no threat of a tiger coming at me.
Yeah, I used to be rubbish at breathing, like meditative breathing, absolutely rubbish. But now I get actually a real comfort from doing those types of breaths. It actually feels really nice.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. Do you think it's an age thing? I'm sure the older I get, I really find value in like slowing down a bit.
It just feels really nice to take really deep breaths in my body. It just feels really, really nice to do that. Whereas before, I don't know, I'd be like, I couldn't connect with it,
Yeah,
But
yeah,
so these golden nuggets, these, you see, as we can see here, it really starts with the individual, but organizations can do a whole lot as well. So we work together to create the signature keynote.
Did.
around called the Recovery Revolution, which is this movement you're creating, which is all about strategic recovery. So since we did that, so we met and we filmed it, and we practiced in person in Brighton. So what's happened? Well, that was December. So what's happened so far with that?
Wow, very exciting. So I think it was January the 4th, I was in Auckland on holiday and I had the opportunity to speak at a mind body conference. So I delivered my keynote to 50 people
Excellent.
from all around the world, and that was incredible. Off the back of that, I've got the potential of some workshops with a large company in Auckland.
Wow,
Yeah.
fantastic.
And even better, one of my one-to-one clients, he's working with me for about 16 weeks now. His boss was looking for somebody to speak at their conference. So on Wednesday next week, I'm going up to Stoke to deliver my keynote to 35 people managers.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which is amazing because the company who've employed me are really forward thinking, and they really want to use their people managers to create that ripple effect so that once they learn the information I'm going to share, they can then share it with their teams. And then, of course, you know this as well. Once their teams start to incorporate it, then it even spirals out to their families as well.
Yeah.
So it's just about creating that well-being impact.
Yeah. The Recovery Revolution.
Recovery revolution, yes.
And it's not just about your keynote, you have this fantastic keynote. It is brilliant, and it really does provide an opportunity to shift thinking in this area in a really great way. So you're going to be delivering that with this company, but it's not just about that, because you also have other solutions that can support organizations with this, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got
yeah.
coaching and programs and workshops and things like that. So it's unlocked. This is the chocolate room strategy, by the way, for anybody that has listened to this podcast. There is an episode on the chocolate room strategy, and it's something that I talk about. If you're a coach, the keynote is and can be like a door to your chocolate room, or another initiative can be the door to the chocolate room, so that it's not just about the keynote itself, because a keynote is fantastic and it has its purpose for a particular event, but it can only go so far in implementation, right?
Yeah,
So the leaders that listen to your talk next Wednesday, which is very exciting, are going to be inspired to take action, which they'll be able to implement so much from your keynote. But there's also other solutions as well, right?
absolutely. One-to-one coaching, group coaching. Developed a program called the 28-day energy reset. So it's for anybody that's, feeling stuck, feeling burnt out, knowing that they'd like to make some changes, but they don't really know where to start because there's so much information out there.
Yeah. And they're probably buzzing in their head with not knowing how to get off this, this wheel. Well, we'll make sure that we link that in the show notes so that people can get access to that if they wish. The 28-day reset.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, so that's going to be a fantastic resource for people. And if anybody is thinking, I need Chloe to come and talk, to give them her signature keynote talk in my organization, well, that information will be in the show notes as well. So you can get in touch with Chloe and book her to speak at your event or within your organization, because it is a truly fantastic legacy phrase, which is creating a movement around an idea that is so important in taking strides towards closing this deficit, closing this gap, and creating a completely different way that we work and recover, most importantly. As I say, I'm completely bought in. I have been for a long time. I love what you do and I love your work. And thank you for sharing it with us today on Words That Change Lives. But before we go, I ask all my guests that come on, what words have changed your life?
Great question. And you know what? I do love a quote, and I'm a real big believer in, words really have an impact on how we live our lives. But I think my favourite quote has to be from Helen Keller. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. And I think the reason I love that so much is because, I've had coaches for the last 15, 20 years. And I think a coach helps us to get to where we want to be faster than we could by ourselves. And we all need people around us that are speaking the same language, having the same vision as ourselves. So yeah, Helen Keller, that's my favourite quote of the moment.
Yeah, and it really resonates, knowing how you're connecting with people, community teams, support groups and things like that. And I'm doing more of that too, because it can be quite isolating when you work for yourself and you work from home, and you can kind of like close yourself down. So having a coach, being part of a community, being part of a mastermind, a membership, a networking group, a walking group, whatever it is, well, as you say, as Helen says, is a huge difference. It actually means so much in what you can achieve. So fully agree with that. Thank you so much, Chloe, for coming on Words That Change Lives.
Well, thank you for having me.